Most people misunderstand what a demon truly is. They imagine something external, dramatic, loud, and obviously dangerous. But the most destructive forces in your life rarely announce themselves. They do not arrive as villains. They arrive as habits, attitudes, emotional climates, and repeating patterns that slowly pull you away from clarity and self-mastery. A demon is not always a person who intends harm. Often, it is an energy that operates through people, situations, and routines, including your own behavior. A person can be kind and still carry a destructive pattern. A relationship can feel familiar and still be poisonous. A family dynamic can look normal and still keep everyone trapped. When you label demons only as bad people, you blind yourself to subtler influences. You excuse what drains you because it does not look evil enough. You tolerate what weakens you because it wears the face of love, tradition, or loyalty. Destructive patterns survive because they feel familiar. The mind confuses familiarity with safety. If you grew up around chaos, calm feels uncomfortable. If you grew up around criticism, encouragement feels suspicious. These internalized patterns become demons that guide your choices without your permission. You may seek relationships that mirror old wounds. You may repeat conversations that go nowhere. You may sabotage peace because stillness exposes unresolved pain. Energy spreads faster than words. Spend enough time around fear, doubt, resentment, or laziness, and you will begin to normalize it. You will call it realism. You will call it just how life is. Slowly your standards drop. Your discipline weakens. Your inner voice becomes noisy. This is how demons work, not through force, but through repetition. A destructive pattern does not need to shout. It whispers. It says, rest tomorrow. It says, react now. It says, avoid discomfort. It says, stay the same. Over time, these whispers shape identity. You stop asking who you could become and start defending who you are. Growth becomes threatening. Stillness becomes boring. Responsibility feels heavy. Some demons wear the mask of care. Overprotection can suffocate growth. Constant advice can erode self-trust. Emotional dependence can look like closeness. These patterns keep you small while convincing you they are helping. They feed on your hesitation, your guilt, your need for approval. Other demons live inside you. The need to be liked, the fear of disappointing others, the habit of explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. These internal patterns make you vulnerable to external manipulation. When you do not govern your emotions, someone else will benefit from that weakness. But thoughts are powerful because they feel impersonal. You tell yourself it is just how things are, just how people are, just how you are. This removes responsibility, and where responsibility disappears, stagnation grows. Awareness is the beginning of disruption. The moment you notice a pattern, it loses some of its control. Observation creates space. Space creates choice. A demon thrives in unconsciousness. It needs you distracted, reactive, emotionally loud. It does not survive long in silence and attention. When you slow down and observe your reactions, you begin to see what triggers you, who drains you, what habits weaken you, what thoughts repeat without producing results. You cannot fight a pattern with anger. Anger feeds it. You dissolve patterns with clarity, consistency, and calm repetition of better choices. Small changes break old loops. New routines starve old habits. Boundaries interrupt familiar cycles. Once you understand that demons are often patterns rather than people, you stop blaming and start adjusting. You stop trying to change others and start changing your position. You stop asking why something hurts and start noticing why it repeats. This shift returns power to you. Growth reveals truth faster than conflict ever could. When you decide to improve yourself, you do not need to announce it. You do not need to argue. Your actions will speak clearly, and those around you will respond in ways that expose their inner state. This is why growth is uncomfortable not only for you, but for the environment you exist in. Every system resists change, especially when that change threatens its balance. Watch closely when you choose discipline over indulgence. When you wake up earlier, guard your time, speak less, and focus more. Some people will feel inspired, others will feel irritated without knowing why. That irritation is information. It is not about you personally. It is about what your behavior reflects back to them. Self-discipline is a mirror. It reflects procrastination, excuses, and avoidance in others. When someone feels exposed by your consistency, they may try to pull you back into old habits. They will invite you to waste time. They will joke about your seriousness. They will frame your structure as obsession or arrogance. This is not concern. This is discomfort. Growth breaks unspoken agreements. Many relationships are built on mutual weakness. You complain together. You escape together. You avoid responsibility together. When one person decides to change, the contract is broken. The other person must either rise or sabotage. Sabotage is easier. Notice how people react when you stop oversharing, when you stop explaining your decisions, when you no longer seek approval. Some will accuse you of becoming distant. In reality, you have become centered. Silence threatens those who rely on noise to feel relevant. When you choose purpose over pleasure, your absence becomes noticeable. You are no longer available for every distraction. This absence creates insecurity. Instead of asking how to grow with you, some will attempt to guilt you back into availability. They will remind you of who you used to be. They will question your loyalty. They confuse access with love. Observe reactions, not words. Words are easy to manage. Reactions are instinctive. A forced smile, a sudden change in tone, a passive comment, a subtle withdrawal of support. These moments reveal alignment or resistance. Your job is not to judge them, but to register what you see. True support feels light. It does not compete. It does not rush you. It does not need to be loud. When someone supports your growth, they respect your boundaries even when they do not benefit from them. When someone fears your growth, they interpret your boundaries as rejection. Growth also exposes internal resistance. Part of you will want to return to comfort. Part of you will fear standing alone. This is why external reactions feel powerful. They resonate with your own doubt. If you are not aware of this, you will mistake internal fear for external truth. Consistency creates distance naturally. You do not need to cut people off. Different rhythms separate on their own. Some people move fast. Some remain still. For a time, you may walk together. Eventually, paths diverge. When someone reacts negatively to your discipline, they are telling you where they are, not who you are. Your progress does not accuse them, but it reminds them of promises they made to themselves, reminds them of time passing, reminds them of choices avoided. Stay calm, stay observant. Do not explain your vision to those who are threatened by it. Explanations invite debate. Discipline requires no defense. Your responsibility is not to manage others' emotions. It is to manage your direction. Growth will always reorganize your relationships. This is not cruelty. This is alignment. As you continue, reactions will become clearer, less personal, and easier to read. You will begin to sense who walks beside you, who walks behind you, and who can no longer walk with you. At all, negativity rarely arrives openly. It does not say it wants to harm you. It dresses itself as wisdom, experience, and care. It speaks calmly and claims to be practical. This is why it is so easy to accept. When negativity is wrapped in concern, it bypasses your defenses and enters your thinking as advice rather than influence. You will hear phrases that sound reasonable. Be careful. Don't get your hopes up. I just don't want you to be disappointed. People like us don't usually succeed at things like that. These statements pretend to protect you from pain, but what they actually protect is the speaker's comfort. They lower the ceiling of what feels possible so no one has to confront their own limitations. Concern without encouragement is control. Real care strengthens your confidence and expands your options. False concern shrinks your world while claiming to keep you safe. It focuses on everything that could go wrong and nothing that could go right. Over time, this kind of talk reshapes how you see the future. You begin to expect failure. You begin to hesitate before taking risks. You start editing your ambitions to avoid criticism. Negativity disguised as concern often relies on your past. It reminds you of mistakes you already paid for. It highlights moments of weakness as permanent traits. It speaks as if growth is rare and change is unrealistic. By anchoring you to who you were, it quietly denies who you are becoming. This form of negativity also avoids responsibility. If you never try, you never fail. If you keep expectations low, you never have to risk disappointment. The person offering this advice may believe they are being kind, but kindness that robs you of courage is not kindness. It is fear in polite language. Repeated exposure to this energy dulls your initiative. You begin to internalize doubt as your own voice. What once sounded like someone else's opinion becomes your inner dialogue. This is how external negativity becomes an internal demon. It no longer needs a speaker. It runs automatically. Notice how this concern reacts when you show progress, when something works, when you gain momentum. True concern relaxes when you become stronger. False concern becomes quieter, sarcastic, or suddenly shifts the topic. It cannot celebrate what contradicts its narrative. Negativity disguised as concern often comes from people who are close to you. Proximity gives it credibility. You trust them. You value their opinion. That trust is what gives their words weight. This is why boundaries are difficult. You feel disloyal for not listening, even when listening weakens you. Pay attention to how you feel after these conversations. Not immediately, but later. Do you feel grounded or anxious? Clear or heavy? Motivated or hesitant? The body registers truth faster than the mind. Emotional heaviness is a signal. This kind of negativity also resists timelines. It keeps you stuck in preparation. Always more thinking, more caution, more waiting. It frames action as reckless and delay as wisdom. Life passes quietly while you are being careful. Awareness changes the dynamic. When you recognize the pattern, you stop arguing with it. You stop defending your goals. You stop trying to convince anyone. You listen politely and decide privately. This removes its leverage. You do not need to label anyone as bad. Most people are not malicious. They are afraid. Fear spreads through language. When you protect your mind, you protect your future. Encouragement does not mean blind optimism. It means belief in growth. It allows room for mistakes. It trusts learning. Negativity disguised as concern does the opposite. It treats potential as a threat and uncertainty as danger. As you become more conscious, you will hear the difference immediately. One voice opens space, the other closes it. One makes you stand taller, the other makes you smaller. Emotional manipulation becomes visible the moment you begin to set boundaries. Before that, it hides behind familiarity and routine. When you are always available, always agreeable, always explaining yourself, manipulation does not need to work hard. It only reveals itself when access is reduced. This is why boundaries act like light. They expose what was operating comfortably in the dark. The first response to a boundary is often confusion, real or performed. Why are you acting like this? What happened to you? Did I do something wrong? These questions appear innocent, but they shift focus away from your choice and onto their feelings. Instead of discussing your limits, you are pulled into managing their emotions. Guilt is the preferred tool. It sounds like disappointment, sadness, or moral superiority. After everything I've done for you, I never expected this from you. Family wouldn't treat me this way. The message is clear. Your boundary is framed as betrayal. Your self-respect is reframed as selfishness. Another tactic is emotional withdrawal. Warmth disappears, support fades, communication becomes cold or minimal. This silence is not peace, it is punishment. The goal is to make you uncomfortable enough to return to old behavior. Humans are wired to seek connection. Manipulation uses this instinct against you. Watch for sudden role reversal. The person who benefited from your availability becomes the victim of your absence. Your reasonable limit becomes their suffering. Your calm explanation becomes proof that you no longer care. Logic will not resolve this because the issue is not misunderstanding. It is control. Manipulation thrives on reaction. The more you explain, the more material it has to work with. Every justification becomes something to argue against. Every apology reinforces the idea that your boundary was wrong. Silence, in this context, is not avoidance. It is clarity. Boundaries threaten people who rely on access rather than respect. If someone values you, they adjust. If someone uses you, they resist. This distinction becomes painfully clear when you stop overgiving. Manipulation often appears subtle. There are no raised voices, no obvious cruelty, just a constant pressure to feel responsible for someone else's emotional state. You are made to feel that your peace causes their pain. This creates internal conflict. You begin to doubt yourself. Even when your boundary is reasonable, notice the timing. Emotional manipulation intensifies when you are improving your life, when you are busier, calmer, or more focused. Growth reduces availability, and reduced availability threatens those who depend on your attention to feel secure. Some manipulators use memory as a weapon. They bring up past favors to create debt. They recall sacrifices to justify present control. Gratitude is healthy. Indebtedness is not. Love given freely does not require repayment through obedience. Others use labels. You've changed. You're cold. You're selfish now. These labels are designed to trigger identity fear. You are tempted to abandon your boundary to protect how you are seen. This is why inner clarity matters. If you do not know who you are, labels will move you. Manipulation collapses when it is not fed. Calm repetition is powerful. This is what I can do. This is what I cannot do. No anger, no defense, no long explanation. Over time, the dynamic must change because the old strategy no longer works. It is important to understand that manipulation does not always come from malice. Many people learned it as survival. They fear abandonment. They fear losing relevance. They fear being alone with themselves. Understanding this creates compassion, but compassion does not require compliance. Healthy relationships adjust to boundaries. Unhealthy ones protest. This protest is not proof that you are wrong. It is proof that something was benefiting from your lack of limits. As you hold your boundaries without aggression, your nervous system stabilizes. You stop anticipating reactions. You stop rehearsing explanations. Your energy returns. This calm is not distance. It is alignment. Distraction, chaos, and subtle disrespect often arrive quietly, which is why they are so effective. They do not demand your attention all at once. They take it in small pieces. A little interruption here, a small comment there, a habit that seems harmless. Over time, these fragments accumulate and drain your focus, your emotional stability, and your sense of direction. Distraction is rarely accidental. Some people are uncomfortable with stillness, especially when stillness leads to self-awareness. They interrupt your concentration not because they need you, but because your focus reminds them of their own avoidance. When you are grounded and attentive, it exposes restlessness in others. Pulling you into distraction restores their comfort. Chaos feeds on reaction. In calm environments, it feels out of place. This is why some individuals create problems when none exist. They stir misunderstandings. They exaggerate minor issues. They bring urgency where patience would resolve everything. Chaos keeps attention external. It prevents reflection. It keeps emotions active and thinking shallow. Subtle disrespect is more damaging than open hostility. Loud conflict is obvious. It gives you something to respond to. Subtle disrespect works differently. It hides behind humor, forgetfulness, or casual dismissal. A joke that undermines you. A comment that ignores your values. A repeated habit of being late. Each instance is small enough to excuse, but together they send a message about how much you are valued. These behaviors drain energy because they force constant adjustment. You question whether you are overreacting. You explain things that should not need explanation. You lower expectations to avoid disappointment. This internal negotiation consumes attention that could be used for growth. People who rely on chaos often feel uncomfortable when you become consistent. Routine threatens unpredictability. Discipline exposes impulsiveness. When you stop engaging in drama, they may accuse you of being boring or distant. What they mean is that you are no longer feeding the dynamic they depend on. Disrespect tests boundaries. It escalates gradually. If ignored, it grows. If challenged emotionally, it becomes defensive. The most effective response is calm acknowledgement and adjustment. You take note, you change access, you reduce exposure, you do not argue about intentions. You observe patterns. Some distractions come in the form of urgency. Everything is sudden. Everything must be addressed now. This creates a constant state of alertness. Over time, the nervous system becomes exhausted. Exhaustion weakens discernment. When you are tired, you tolerate more than you should. Chaos also disguises responsibility. In a disordered environment, nothing is clearly owned. Problems float without resolution. Accountability disappears. This benefits those who avoid self-examination. When you bring structure, you disrupt this avoidance. Resistance often follows. Energy is finite. Where it goes determines who you become. When much of it is spent managing chaos, responding to disrespect, or navigating distraction, little remains for creativity, learning, or peace. This is why protecting your attention is not selfish. It is essential. Notice how your body responds. Tightness, irritation, mental fatigue. These signals appear long before conscious understanding. If you feel consistently drained around certain dynamics, something is being taken from you. Whether intentionally or not, distance restores clarity. Not dramatic separation, but intentional reduction. Fewer explanations, shorter interactions, clearer priorities. Chaos loses influence when it cannot access your reactions. Respect does not require constant negotiation. In healthy environments, it is assumed. Where it must be demanded repeatedly, something is misaligned. You cannot train people to value what they benefit from devaluing. As you simplify your environment, remove unnecessary noise, and respond less to subtle provocations, your energy returns, focus deepens, emotional stability increases. What once felt normal begins to feel exhausting. What once drained you becomes obvious. And what you tolerate changes quietly. Awareness, silence, and distance are not passive states. They are active forms of power. They do not announce themselves, and they do not seek permission. This is why they are so effective. When you stop reacting automatically, you interrupt patterns that once fed on your attention and emotion. Most destructive dynamics rely on predictable responses: anger, defense, explanation, justification. Once someone knows how to provoke you, they control the interaction. Awareness breaks this cycle. The moment you observe a trigger without acting on it, the pattern weakens. You see what is happening instead of becoming part of it. Silence is misunderstood. It is not avoidance or suppression. It is restraint. It creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, choice appears. When you do not respond immediately, you deny manipulation its fuel. Many people escalate when they are met with silence because they are accustomed to reaction. When reaction disappears, confusion follows. Distance is not punishment, it is recalibration. You do not need to disappear completely. You simply adjust proximity, less access, fewer explanations, shorter conversations, clearer limits. This shift changes the dynamic without confrontation. Patterns cannot survive when conditions change. Awareness also turns inward. You begin to notice your own impulses, the urge to explain, the need to be understood, the fear of being misjudged. These internal reactions are often what external dynamics exploit. When you see them clearly, they lose control. Silence allows truth to surface. Without constant talking, you notice inconsistencies. You hear what is not said. You see how people behave when they are not being reassured or entertained. Silence reveals intention. Distance gives perspective. When you step back, patterns become obvious. You see repetition instead of isolated incidents. You stop excusing behavior as temporary or accidental. You recognize cycles. This clarity is impossible when you are emotionally immersed. Many people fear distance because they confuse it with abandonment. In reality, distance creates objectivity. It allows you to decide consciously rather than react emotionally. It restores self-respect. Awareness also means recognizing when engagement is unnecessary. Not every comment requires correction. Not every misunderstanding requires clarification. Not every provocation deserves acknowledgement. Choosing not to engage is a form of self-discipline. When you combine awareness with silence, others are forced to reveal themselves. Without your emotional input, they must sit with their own behavior. Some adjust, some escalate, some withdraw. Each response provides information. Distance protects your nervous system. Constant emotional engagement keeps the body in a state of alert. Over time, this creates fatigue and confusion. Stepping back allows regulation to return. Calm becomes natural again. These tools do not make you cold. They make you clear. You are not withdrawing from people. You are withdrawing from patterns that do not serve growth. Power does not always look like control. Often it looks like restraint, the ability to remain composed when provoked, the ability to walk away without explanation, the ability to observe without judgment. As awareness deepens, silence becomes easier. As silence becomes easier, distance feels natural. You stop chasing closure. You stop seeking validation. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Pores dissolve when they are no longer fed. They need attention, emotion, and repetition. Awareness removes repetition. Silence removes emotion. Distance removes access. Over time, what once felt heavy loses weight. Interactions simplify. Energy stabilizes. You become less available to chaos and more available to yourself. This is not withdrawal from life. It is return to center. Everything you have learned points to one truth. The greatest threats to your peace are rarely obvious, and the greatest protections are rarely dramatic. What weakens you most often comes quietly, through patterns you tolerate, reactions you repeat, and relationships you never examine. The moment you begin to see clearly, power shifts back into your hands. You do not need to fight, expose, or accuse anyone. Clarity does not require conflict. When you understand how energy, behavior, and repetition shape your life, you stop personalizing what is structural and stop reacting to what is predictable. This alone frees enormous mental and emotional space. Growth will naturally reorganize your relationships. Some will strengthen, some will fade. This is not loss, it is alignment. When you stop feeding distraction, chaos, and manipulation, they cannot follow you into stillness. What remains is quieter, simpler, and more real. The work is internal before it is external. Awareness of patterns, discipline over impulses, and respect for your own limits determine the quality of your life more than any confrontation ever could. When you protect your attention, your energy, and your direction, you no longer need to search for enemies. Peace is not found by removing every negative influence. It is found by becoming someone who is no longer controlled by them. When you choose awareness over reaction, silence over noise, and clarity over comfort, the demons you feared lose their power because they were never stronger than your unconsciousness to begin with.